What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one I'm going to go over 5 players I think you guys should all be targeting that are currently going after round 10 in fantasy football drafts this season. After round 10 is being viewed as a player that has an ADP after pick 120, and I'm pulling these ADPs based off of Fantasy Pros consensus ADPs. So depending on your platform, these guys could go a little bit earlier or later, but generally a good basis to go off of is what I pull from Fantasy Pros. So I think these guys are certainly worth interesting deep dives into. I think all of these players have very real opportunities to significantly outperform their ADPs, guys that could really be real difference makers for you. Everyone knows that you really do get a significant leg up on your opponents in fantasy if you do hit on some sort of gold mine in the later rounds. Those are really the true difference makers, the league makers that you can get if you draft a top tier player at a position that you get super late in a draft. It's basically like getting another really high draft pick for free, and it really gives you a whole leg up in the competition. So finding those diamonds in the rough is super fun. It's really valuable and can really help improve your performance over the course of the season. And a lot of the people that are going this late are just guys that the consensus or average drafter really has never heard of. They're probably just going to be taking guys based off of their ADP at that point, and you can have a real advantage on those guys if you've got specific guys in mind and really can understand who you're taking and why you're taking them. So yeah, I really like making these videos, and with that, let's get into the first player here. So to start us off, I'm going to start with Russell Wilson. I get it. It's really gross. He really let everyone down last season. He was the guy who received the most votes for MVP last season, or the most bets for winning the MVP going into last season, and obviously we know how that turned out. But I think it's fair to give Russ a pretty clean slate this season. He's still a Hall of Fame quarterback that's going to be playing with a new Hall of Fame head coach, and he's got legitimately good pass catchers on his side. He's got obviously Jerry Jeudy, who I think is going to take a huge step forward this season. Cortland Sutton's not bad. Tim Patrick's solid. Marvin Mims is a really explosive rookie who I like quite a bit. Greg Dulcich was a really explosive tight end who I think is going to be a really integral part of this offense. Javonte Williams was not placed on the PUP to start training camp, so it looks more and more like Javonte Williams could be healthy and ready to go to start the season. They added Samaj P. Ryan. They've got some really good weapons on this offense, and they invested really heavily in their offensive line. They spent about $130 million in the offseason to clean that up, so it should be a lot better for this entire offense as a whole. On top of that, Russ has slimmed down about 15 pounds this offseason, so I think there's a realistic opportunity for him to offer more of a rushing floor than he did last season, maybe a little bit closer to what we saw a few years ago in Seattle. Sean Payton's been on record saying he wanted to see Russ run more a lot last season. He fully expect him to utilize that part of his game more this season. And he's currently being drafted 121st overall as the quarterback 17. And as bad as things were last season, Russell Wilson finished as the quarterback 18 in fantasy. So there's really no world where he finishes anywhere below this draft position. I'm actually currently projecting him to be my quarterback 7. I think he's got legitimate top 10 quarterback upside this season. And if you want to wait on the quarterback position, I think Russell Wilson's one of the few guys left that really does offer legitimate top 5 upside. He's been the quarterback 1 overall in fantasy before in 2018. He's still a good enough runner to offer value on the ground. He's still got an elite deep ball. Sean Payton always posts a top 10 offense, and if this offense is actually a top 5, top 10 offense, and Russ is back to his former self, he really could be a league winner where he's being drafted right now. Next up, we've got a running back I really like in Tyler Algier. Algier's just a really good player. He averaged over 5 yards per carry last season, and he was actually the running back 5 in fantasy from week 15 on last season when they finally really gave him more of the work and sort of phased out Cordarrelle Patterson. Now, obviously, Tyler Algier is not going to be given that feature role in the Falcons offense this year. They spent the 8th overall pick on Bijan Robinson, and Bijan Robinson is just a better player. Bijan Robinson is going to be the guy that's the workhorse in this offense, but Algier is going to get some touches even with Bijan healthy. I think this is going to be a really run-heavy team. You could still see Tyler Algier get 10 touches. He could be a guy that in deeper leagues you might want to or need to play in a flex in a bye week or something if you're in a pinch. But on top of that, if Bijan were to go down, then I think Tyler Algier is a legitimate top 10 running back. Like I said, he's a really good player. He can catch the ball. He's a super efficient runner. And the Falcons have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, really quietly. They've got really elite guards. They had the highest rated guard in the NFL per PFF last season. And I think this is going to be a team that we all know what they want to do. They want to run the ball more than anyone in the league. They ran the ball at like the second highest rate in the NFL last season, only second to the Bears. And they've got their head coach, Arthur Smith, who came from Tennessee, another run-heavy team. So we know this is going to be a team that wants to run the ball a ton. I could easily see them running the ball 600-plus times this season. They can't all go to Bijan, so maybe Bijan gets 20, 25 carries a game this season. You see Tyler Algier get 10 per game, and even more than that if Bijan goes down. Obviously, like I just said, Tyler Algier can legitimately be a league-winning asset. He's being drafted 154th overall. That puts him in about the 13th round at the end of it. And he's being drafted as the running back 48. I think he'll actually finish around the running back 48 if Bijan does not go down. If Bijan just plays the whole season, I think Tyler Algier is still going to be like a low-end running back 4, a guy you can play in really deep leagues just because he's a talented player. He's going to be efficient on the limited touches he's given. And if Bijan were to go down, like I said, Tyler Algier will be a top 10 running back. He'll be a guy that can win people a lot of leagues, and he's definitely a guy that's just worth taking a dart throw on later in drafts. Next up, I've got Rondell Moore. I've talked about Rondell Moore a couple times this offseason, but I actually think he's just being severely undervalued in drafts, and it's hard for me to avoid talking about him. He's honestly a player that I think has a legitimate shot to be a wide receiver 3 this season. Kyler Murray's timeline is really the big question mark here. In games where Kyler Murray plays, this Cardinals offense is going to be very capable of supporting 2 wide receivers. Obviously, Marquise Brown would be the number 1 in this offense, but I think it's pretty clear that Rondell Moore is going to be the number 2. We've heard good things, good reports about Michael Wilson, but it's just tough for me to project a third-round rookie to really break out this season. And honestly, prior to getting hurt last season, Rondell Moore was really quietly breaking out. He had a 5-game stretch where he was the wide receiver 12 in fantasy prior to that game against I forget who it was, but he got hurt in like the first play, got -1 fantasy points, and just really never bounced back from that. But if he was healthy the whole rest of the season, he was really breaking out. They were scripting touches for him. He was an integral part of the receiving game. And like I said, even while Kyler's out, they are manufacturing touches for this guy. He's going to be a guy that in PPR formats can be flex viable just because they're going to throw him a couple screen passes a game. They might use him out of the backfield a little bit, given how just awful their backfield depth is behind James Conner. So this is going to be a guy that's going to get probably 8 touches a game, 5 or 6 of those being receptions. And I think he's just going to be a guy that, especially in PPR formats, has pretty significant upside. I've currently got him projected to be my wide receiver 29, believe it or not, despite an ADP of wide receiver 57. He's just being drafted super late. I think he's going to be a guy that you can actually play on a pretty weekly basis, especially when Kyler Murray's back. And even if he's not, I think that you're going to be able to use him on occasion. He just has no business being drafted this late. I think he's going to be a guy that you can actually use, and those are guys that are hard to find this late in drafts. Next up, I want to talk about Devonte Parker. I've probably advocated for Devonte Parker a few too many times in my life, but I'm going to do it again here. The Patriots just don't have a clear wide receiver 1 on their roster. They lost Jacoby Myers and Nelson Aguilar, who were 2 actually pretty integral parts of this offense last season. They added Juju Smith-Schuster in the offseason, but Juju himself was dealing with a knee injury. It's quite likely that Juju's just going to be banged up. He hasn't been able to get on the field yet. He's not a guy that I'm really projecting to be a dominant force. He'll be an okay asset in PPR formats, but Juju's not going to be a true number 1 wide receiver for this team. And Parker's just a big body guy. He can not separate very well, but he can really go up and make contested catches. He's a guy that certainly has touchdown upside in an offense that I think should be better this season under Bill O'Brien now that they have an actual offensive coordinator. Devonte Parker's the kind of player that, despite the fact that he might have, 60, 70 receptions only on the season, he could easily post an 8, 9 touchdown season, especially if Mac Jones bounces back this year. And the fact of the matter is he's being drafted as the 82nd overall wide receiver. That's the 248th pick in drafts. It's effectively a 20th round draft pick. So he's going undrafted in pretty much every draft. If you want to take him as your last draft pick, I think that's a perfectly viable strategy. These Patriots have Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, Kendrick Bourne, Keyshawn Boutte, Devonte Parker. Those are 5 receivers, really, that have a shot to make the roster. Devonte Parker is probably the best of all those guys, and he's definitely the best bet to score the most touchdowns. This is going to be an offense that, like I said, should be better. And Devonte Parker's posted a top 10 fantasy season before with Ryan Fitzpatrick in Miami just a few years back. I think it's very possible that Devonte Parker has a bit of a bounce-back season. They just gave him a 3-year incentive-laden deal, and he's just a good player. He goes up and makes contested catches. He's a guy that, especially in best ball formats, he's definitely got weekly upside, just given that I think he's got a real good shot at scoring a touchdown any other week. And obviously, if he ends up putting a stranglehold on this wide receiver 1 in the offense, they missed out on DeAndre Hopkins. So, like I said, this role is very up in the air for this team. Devonte Parker is probably the best bet to at least lead the team in touchdowns, and he's free. So, especially in deeper leagues, I think he's totally worth drafting late. And last but certainly not least, probably the player on this list that I'm drafting the most is Rashad Penny. There's really just no denying how talented Rashad Penny is when he's healthy. He's averaged over 5 yards per carry every single year of his career, and he now plays behind arguably the best offensive line in the NFL, and he's going to be a part of a really high-powered offense. The Eagles were one of the best offenses in the NFL last season. They might be a team that needs to score even more this season, given that they lost some pieces on defense. And he's currently being drafted in the 11th round pick 124. He might be the only running back being drafted this late that has a legitimate shot of being a top 10 running back without there being an injury ahead of him. He's currently competing for touches with DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott. Neither one of those guys are guys that I fully expect to dominate touches in first and second down or the goal line work. So I think that's going to be Rashad Penny's role in this offense. He's probably the best bet to lead the team in rushing attempts and total touches as well. This is going to be a guy, he's got a legitimate shot to average 6 yards per carry this season. This offensive line is absolutely incredible. Teams are going to be worried about Jalen Hurts keeping it himself. They've obviously got elite pass catching weapons. They're just not going to be able to stack the box on him. And like I said, he's just a really explosive player. He's going to be a guy that he's just going to have several big, long touchdowns this season. He's a home run hitter. He's a guy that, if he can stay healthy, that's the big if here, he's got a legitimate shot to be a top 10 running back in fantasy. I would obviously not recommend drafting Rashad Penny and counting on him to perform, because in all likelihood, he's probably going to play less than 10 games this season. 10 games would honestly be an optimistic outlook for him. But in the games where he does play, I think he's going to be really useful. He's going to be a guy that on a per-touch basis is going to be an absolute fantasy stud. And these are the kind of draft picks that I like making later on in drafts. The kind of guy that either he gets hurt and you can just drop him, or the kind of guy that is a league-winning asset. If Rashad Penny actually manages to stay healthy for the whole season, he could be the kind of guy that really increases your odds of winning your championships this season. And like I said, at being drafted in the 11th round, he's not going to cost you all that much. He's a guy that, if he's bad, okay, whatever. You spent an 11th round draft pick on him. He's not really going to hurt your odds of making the championship or making your playoffs. And if he's actually a healthy elite performer, then he could legitimately be the guy that wins your league. So I like taking Rashad Penny in the 11th round quite a bit, especially as my RB3 or 4, and I really would highly recommend that you do that as well. So that'll do it for this video. Up next, I'll be doing my video that I do every year where I'll make 5 bold predictions for the upcoming fantasy football season. Of note, last season I predicted that Jalen Hurts would be the quarterback 1 overall in fantasy, so that one turned out pretty well. So stay tuned for that video. Those ones are always fun. I think that if I can get any of those right, there's certainly predictions that could really make or break your fantasy season. So take a look at those. That should be a really fun video. I love making that one as well. If this is your first time on the channel, I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I do highly recommend that you subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. I'll be putting out videos pretty much every single day the whole rest of the off season. I'm going to be here all off season and regular season long to help you dominate your drafts and then win your league. So if you liked the video and made it this far, which I hope you did, please do take the time to like the video. It really helps with the algorithm, really helps me know that I'm doing a good job, and helps me know that you like the content. So really helps grow the channel as well. We're somewhere around 460 subscribers right now. Would love to hit 500 by the start of the NFL season and maybe just grow beyond there. So it's been a lot of fun. It's really cool seeing the channel grow. I can't believe that many of you guys actually care what I have to say, so it's really cool. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.